Today, after 6 days of protest in Minnesota and across the country, the Trump Justice Department opened a civil rights investigation into the fatal shooting of the Minneapolis ICU nurse Alex Pretty, who was shot in the back by ICE agents last Saturday. Now, this is important. It's a welcome reversal since civil rights investigations are an important accountability tool. The New York Times notes the investigations have at times resulted in significant prison terms for officers like Derek Chauvin, the Minneapolis police officer who pleaded guilty in 2021 to civil rights violations in the murder of George Floyd. But they sometimes end without charges being filed, as in the case of Eric Garner, a Staten Island man who died in 2014 after a New York police officer placed him in a chokehold. The decision to move forward with a civil rights investigation in Mr. Pretty's case came after several federal law enforcement officials in Minneapolis revolted against Mr. Blanche's assessment that a similar inquiry was not warranted in the earlier fatal shooting of Renee Good. But the Trump Justice Department started the day filing charges against Don Lemon, best known as a former news anchor on CNN, who's now an independent journalist currently covering the anti-ICE protests in Minneapolis. Don Lemon and a Minnesota journalist, Georgia Fort, both black journalists, were charged with interfering with a church service and denying the churchgoers with their right to practice religion. Both journalists say they were there as journalists to cover the demonstration. Abby Lowell, lawyer for Don Lemon, said in a statement, instead of investigating the federal agents who killed two peaceful Minnesota protesters, the Trump Justice Department is devoting its time, attention, and resources to this arrest. And that is the real indictment of wrongdoing in this case. And despite the Alex Pretty civil rights investigation, Donald Trump has returned to personally attacking Alex Pretty online, calling him an agitator and a possible insurrectionist. Strikes me if Donald Trump wants to find an insurrectionist, he might start with the 1,500 January 6th defendants that he pardoned on his first day in office. But despite what Donald Trump says, Tom Homan is drawing down ICE forces in Minneapolis, and a civil rights investigation for Alex Pretty's killing is happening. The public outcry is working. Today, thousands of students at universities and high schools across the country walked out of their classrooms. Activist groups called for a national shutdown and an economic blackout today, where people skipped work, school, and shopping to protest Donald Trump's immigration policies and the surge of federal ICE agents in Minnesota. And this week, No Kings, which in October got an estimated 7 million people at 2,700 places across the country to protest Donald Trump, has announced its next mass mobilization will be on March 28th in response to what it calls, quote, the secret police force terrorizing American communities. The message is clear. Citizens showing up matters. Joining us now is Leah Greenberg, co-founder and co-executive director of the Indivisible Project. Leah, great to see you. Thank you for being with us.
Great to be here.
You think about this all day, every day. So tell me how you evaluate these developments. I worry about the civil rights investigation largely because the Department of Justice has largely gutted the civil rights unit to start with. So they don't have a deep commitment to these civil rights investigations. But these little bits of movement across the removal of Bovino, Greg Bovino, the idea that there is a civil rights investigation, the walking back of some of the remarkably inflammatory things that the administration officials said. Are these meaningful developments?
Well, I think we have to hold that we're seeing two things at the same time. We are seeing them get a little bit spooked. We're seeing them back off some of the most inflammatory, most visible forms of violence against onlookers. And we're seeing stuff like the swap of Bovino for Homan in Minnesota. And simultaneously, we are seeing this campaign of repression is taking new forms. It's showing up in new tactics, but it is continuing. There is still an enormous ICE presence across Minneapolis. There have been arrests and there are warrants for protesters and for activists across Minnesota who have been out doing nothing more than helping and supporting their neighbors. And today we saw the arrests of Don Lemon, Georgia Fort, and two others for covering protests in Minnesota. So I think what we're seeing is both they are spooked, they are trying to pull back a little bit in some of the public forms of brutality, but they are continuing to crack down on forms of dissent that are crucial for actually protecting people and for getting the word out.
So when you think about, the 7+ million people who turned out for No Kings in October, and the fact that the situation is further inflamed than it was in October, and there is a broader set of complaints for American citizens, Is there a danger in seeing the administration get spooked enough that it pulls back enough to cause some people to say, all right, they're less crazy than they seemed 2 weeks ago?
Knowing this administration, I'm not worried about that. I mean, unfortunately, I worry a lot about a violent. Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, at any point in the last year, if you were to say, oh, now they're going to, clean up their act, now they're going to pull back, you're the dumb money every time. Unfortunately, what we see is that when enough people organize and push them back, they take maybe a step back for a short period of time, but then they move on to their next form of repression, antagonism, attacks on vulnerable populations. And so, as we are thinking about how we build to March 28th, we think it's important to think about it not just as a single day of protest, but as an ongoing campaign of organizing and training and preparation and absorbing people into regular forms of activism, because it's not just about getting a large number of people out on a single day. It's actually about making sure as many people as possible are following in the steps of Alex Preddy or Renee Good and actually organizing on a daily basis to protect their communities.
And really, for the last year, we have seen small protests across the country, consistently small protests that get bigger. They're 10 people, and then it's 20 people, and then it's 30 people. There is value in these small acts across the country. I'd love to see 10 or 15 million people on March 28th. But I think your point is valid that every single person who comes out strengthens this thing in a way that is a force multiplier.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, look, I love to see the drone views of, hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets of big cities. But what is almost as incredible to me is the 10 or 20 people in a town that's never had a protest like this before, because that's the beginning of something really powerful. That's the beginning of an organizing nucleus in that place that can go on to do so much more.
You would think that the shooting of two people who were following the law and doing what they should be doing would alarm potential protesters. That has not been your experience in the last couple of weeks. You have not seen fewer people wanting to sign up, get training, and go out.
Oh, if anything, we've seen these incredibly horrifying, unjustified killings, these murders backfire politically. What we have seen is that each time this administration has had this act of horrifying violence, more people say, what can I do? Put me in, help me figure out how I can be involved. We had, immediately after Alex Preddy's murder, on just within 48 hours, the No Kings Coalition worked together with our friends at ACLU to put on an ICE Watch training. Over 200,000 people have now done that training in just the 48 hours since Preddy's murder. And so, to me, that's just an incredibly powerful demonstration of how dedicated people are, how committed they are, and how these acts of violence are actually backfiring because they are drawing more people in to the cycle of organizing and protecting their neighbors.